Good evening. Welcome once again to our Carinine Aug, in which we discuss matters related to the development of our beloved Bahama land. This evening, I've invited Bishop Hall to share with me in a conversation about compassion and the place of compassion, not just in the church, but the compassion in the church and in the wider society. And to take our cue from Jesus' parable of the Good Samaritan. It's Luke who gives it to us in chapter 10, but it's an extremely important parable because of its wider implications. When Jesus told stories that we call parables, there are two things that are quite unique. That he always chose topics that required no explanation or no introduction. Mm-hmm. We talk about the sower, so everybody knew of a farmer. Right. You talk about the vineyard, everybody knew, so that he could relate to people without having to give any sort of extra introduction. And secondly, they were all taken from everyday life in terms of the practicalities of life. And both of those are very important from an educational point of view, that you get a message across when you don't have to give too many introductions and too many explanations. You can get to the heart of the matter. And the people who hear the stories can easily relate to them, either identify with them or resent or react to them, but they all get the point. And in that regard, he shows that he was a masterful teacher, and he really not only excelled in that art, but gives us some lessons in the way in which the church should be seeking to get its communication across, because sometimes we can get into some highfalutin introductions, etc., and very often you can cloud the message. But I think the whole question of Jesus' use of parables is something that the church can learn from, and learn rather quickly. But in the story he told about, he said this man is journeying and he is attacked and robbed and beaten. They left him assuming that he's dead, but he isn't dead. And there is this human being, beaten up, a human being in need. And then he says there are three people past him. And the first two are related to the church. The priest who is on his way to do his temple duty. Yes. And the Lord tells him that if he goes near them, but he's defiling, so he can't do his duty. So he keeps as far away as possible. He doesn't see a fellow human being in need. He really sees someone who would cause him to become defiled if he gets too close. And the Levite, the temple assistant, suffers from a similar complaint, that he sees the person in need, but he doesn't get close enough to really identify with the person in need. And then the third person who comes is the total stranger, that the Jew is the one who is injured and in need of help. The Samaritan is the one from the north, who the Jews and the Samaritans didn't speak to one another. They were at enmity one with the other. And so it is the total stranger who sees not a Jew, but he sees a fellow human being in need. And he doesn't stop to think about the consequences. He simply goes to help, because here is a fellow human being. And he does what he can, and he takes what he has, and to see to it that the person receives the kind of assistance that he needed, and offered, he said, to the persons responsible for giving the care. He says, when I come back, I will pay whatever else is needed. So it isn't just this immediate response. Yeah. He takes on the responsibility of seeing to it that the needs of the person are totally looked after. And then, so Jesus' question, he says, no, which one of these acted like a neighbor? Which one? And of course the answer is obvious. The one who actually provided the help and provided the assistance. And it seems to me that out of that, we are shown by Jesus in a practical way the importance of compassion.
Yeah.
Compassion in the sense of identifying with, walking in the shoe of the other, and really having empathy for the person and responding, not because there are some people who say, well, oh, I feel for you, so, but who, that feeling doesn't lead them to take any kind of action. Whereas empathy requires that you follow through with the emotional response and all that goes with it. So as I look at the parable, it seems to me that it's a challenge, especially to church people, to understand that human beings encounter needs in different forms. But the response of the Christian should always be a positive one, to help the person simply because the person is in need. And I read a few years ago, this was a bit more than a few years ago now, a story of China and the days when Christians were being persecuted in China, of an American missionary who was rescued across the lake by a chap who had a boat. They were told that the police were coming, looking for this missionary. But this man, who was a communist, not a Christian, he had a boat, and he took him across the lake. And when they got to the other side, he asked him why you did it. I mean, you are not a believer. And he said, I also am a human being.
Yes.
That's his answer.
Yes.
That's it. And that is, he had no other comment.
Yes. And indeed, that's a good point to begin with.
Yeah.
If we can identify people first
Right.
as a human being,
That's human being.
one of the elements in the story of the so-called Good Samaritan is the fact that they were of different ethnicity. They were different political
Different
parties.
parties.
They were different
Different everything,
everything.
except humanity.
Except, and I try to say to people in debates, let's first see people as human beings, just like us. Be they Haitian, Jamaican, from Turks Island, be they homosexuals, be they, I'm of a political party and you different from me, whatever. Let's identify people first as a human being. When we do that, that's a good point of entrance to manifest the spirit of compassion. The man saw, he didn't check to see which church he went to, which denomination he was of, which political party he voted for in the last election. All he saw was a human being
In need.
in need. And he must have had or seen some similar experience. You know, I saw somewhere where compassion was defined as an innate predisposition to stand with somebody who's hurting. It is a native feeling that I want to help that person. And again, regardless of his nationality, his political bias, his denomination, I want to help. And again, I read, when we act with compassion, we act like Jesus Christ.
That's it. And that is at the heart of the message.
Yes.
And it does seem to me that if we contextualize it in our own particular Bahamian context, the Samaritan would have been a Haitian.
He certainly would have been.
Not
He would not have been a Bahamian. Yeah.
Because it is what Jesus is saying. The unexpected one
Yes.
is the one who does the right thing and takes the right action. But let's look at this whole question of human need. The needs that we have vary, and sometimes we have to make a distinction between what we actually need and what we want, because very often our wants are far in excess of what our needs are. But I am not sure that the society in which we live is sufficiently aware of the extent of need in our present society.
And it may be that we become so secular that I'm not sure how much we care. Not only are we aware, but we may not even care. And so the division in our society between the rich and the poor, between those who are compassionate and those who don't care 1 cent, is broadening, is widening. And we have to, that's where the church comes in showing compassion and being the model of what true compassion is all about. It would have been, we may not be able to expect the priest and the Levite who are on their way to church duties to see that this was one of them right here.
Right here.
And in that case, people who hang on to the law rather than a compassionate grace,
They're missing the boat.
they might miss it.
Yeah. Well, you missed the point, because to respond to human need has to be a priority.
Yes.
Must take precedence over the need.
Yes.
And so often we can be so preoccupied with a particular duty that we miss the bigger picture. And the compassionate voice is the voice that says, for the Christian, the compassionate voice is, wherever you see human need,
Of course. You
Christians
respond.
should be making
Yeah.
a response.
Yes.
A response within one's capability.
Yes.
And that determines the quality of the response.
Notice that the man took him up. He did his little with the oil, and he did what he could to save him, and he took him up. I like the part where he went to the motel and left his credit card, just in case anything happens.
What is the totality of the care?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
he sees that this man has needs, and
Yes.
he is ensuring that he gets the total care that he requires.
Yeah.
But how, in our society today, how do we reflect this business of responding to human need?
I think first we need to get it sold on an individual basis. I think more individuals, particularly those who name the name of Christ, must care a little more, must show compassion. I sit here today because somebody had compassion on me. You know, so for me to reach out and help a student or to help a fellow preacher, that's easy for me. But I think we should individualize it first, then we should seek further. The more individuals we get showing compassion, the safer our streets would be, the better our homes would be in terms of marriage and divorce. I think it'll show compassion. Even with divorce, you remember Jesus said, for the hardness of your heart, if you could forgive it, go ahead and live with it. So
the hardness refers to the lack of care.
Yes.
And the lack of concern.
We can't take it.
It's in a way of insulating yourself against the need to respond.
Yes.
So that the hardness of heart, I mean, you see the person in need, but as far as you're concerned, that really isn't.
That's not my business. And no, we have to move further. People who have received the element of compassion should show it.
Yes, but so often in life it's the opposite.
Yes.
That
people who receive it,
they stay away.
They stay right there, as though they are blessed.
They don't see the need
yes.
to respond.
Of course.
As I have received, so will I give.
Yeah.
But that's a message that does seem to me that the secular world does not encourage. And unfortunately, we are becoming more and more secular in our outlook.
In our church, yes.
And we are becoming more and more self-centered as opposed to being outward-looking and outward-caring.
Yes.
So that's the challenge that the gospel gives to us. So after we return from this break, I want to follow up by talking about how the church can be the vehicle for the compassionate society.
Yes.